Blanchard Tavern here the building was built in 1848. When William Blanchard came back from serving in the Revolutionary War, he opened it as a tavern in 1780 and operated it by his family till 1850s. This is what we call the tap room. It's called the tap room because, number one, it's the biggest room, so this is where everybody sat and drank and ate. And also because this is where they would attack the keg, if you can see it behind me there. The ale or the beer or cider, whatever it was, would have been in a wooden keg, and they would have tapped it here and served it here. It's been a tavern from 1780 to 1850, and during the Revolutionary War, plenty of people went by this tavern, going between Boston and Providence or Taunton. So we don't know that George Washington ever slept here, but maybe some notables in the war might have gone and slept here. We don't know. Of course, there were no ledgers or anything back then, so they didn't keep records of who stayed. The Blanchard family, William Blanchard and his family, owned this property. They lived in it in the 1800s. That branch of the Blanchard family died off in the early 1900s. The town of Avon, which was formed in 1888, never had a town hall. They had an office over the fire engine station. So Henry Lawton Blanchard, who was one of the last Blanchard family, gave this building to the town of Avon on their 50th anniversary in 1938, so they would have a town hall. The town of Avon used this as a town hall until 1975, when they decided to move down the street to an old shopping mall, and that's where the town offices are now. So it was a private residence, it was a town hall, and then in 1975, when they moved the town hall down, Henry Lawton Blanchard has established the trust that owns this building now. And they just said in the will that if this building ever became available, that we should buy it. So the trust bought it for $75,000, and they spent several years restoring it, and it was opened as a working tavern in 1980. So in 1980 we opened, and Blanchard Tavern was advertised as the only original operating tavern north of Williamsburg. We had a lot of business in here. There would be as many as 200 people in this building on a Friday or Saturday night. It was originally open 3 nights a week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sunday went away pretty quick because nobody was here. Friday nights became militia night when all the colonials were here. Saturday nights became redcoat night when all the redcoats and the British were here. And you didn't mix the two. The people, when they first started coming in here, we didn't think about it, but they brought their weapons in with them, and the muskets would be stacked in the corner. After a while, somebody said, "Do we know if they're loaded?" And we didn't. So we banned firearms at that point. We still allowed swords, daggers, and hatchets up until the time we closed. They carried all that in here. And they were drinking, but it was a fun place. After the bicentennial wore off, and the reenactors moved on to the Civil War and other things, the business dropped off here. So it started dropping off in the late 90s, 1990s, and by the early 2000s, we'd be lucky to have half a dozen customers on a Saturday night. We went down to 1 night a week, just Saturday nights. We had some events. We would do dinner theater in the 90s, and that drew in crowds because we sold the tickets ahead of time. But that died out too. And we were run totally with volunteers. And the number of volunteers when we opened was over 100. The number of volunteers when we closed in 2014 was 2. So we couldn't operate the place anymore. We didn't have customers. We needed the people to run it. So the decision by the Board of Trustees was to close the tavern at that point. Now, in 2023, the trustees have decided to try and resurrect the tavern because a lot of people have been asking about it. We've started having occasional brunches or lunches here. The Council on Aging comes here once a month for their Council on Aging lunch. We've started renting it out for like birthday parties or showers, small things. Because of the new fire laws after the Station nightclub fire, we cannot have more than 99 people in the whole building. So that puts 50 on the first floor and 49 upstairs, and we don't use the second floor right now. So it limits the amount of people that can be here. We had a full kitchen. We served food and drinks here for 30 odd years. And when we shut down in 2014, about 6 months later, we had a flood because the dishwashing systems, we didn't realize if you don't run them, the gaskets dry up and the water leaks, and it flooded the kitchen. So the floor was ruined, the dishwashers were ruined, some other stuff got ruined. So we had to sort of gut the kitchen, and we're just in the process now of starting to rebuild it, not as a commercial kitchen, but just as a caterer's kitchen, where the caterer that we now have, he brings the food in and serves it out of the kitchen, but nothing is prepared here. What you see is almost all original. The walls, the plaster's been redone. Most of the beams, there were a few that had to be replaced, but most of the beams are original. The floor is original. The fireplace, the mantle. Obviously the furniture's not original. This was purchased in 1979 to open it as a tavern. The doors are all original as far as we know. The basement, the foundation was reinforced when the town owned it by pouring a concrete foundation inside of the old stone foundation. So the place is very well supported. It's a very large building. This was the meeting room when it was a town hall. They cut a hole in the picture over the mantle. But whoever cut the hole for the wood stove kept the piece, and we found the piece in the attic, and it was restored and put back in. Otherwise, we'd have a big patch there. In the original tavern, which we tried to replicate when we opened in 1980, but back in the 17 and 1800s when it was a tavern, this is a place that would have been populated mainly by the men of the town. They would have come into the tap room maybe after work, on their farms or at the shoe factories. We had a lot of shoe factories. And they would have come in here and had some beer, maybe had some food, and then they would have eventually gone home. On Sundays, because back then people went to church all day on Sunday, they would have gone to church in the morning, and then they would have gone home for lunch. Well, that's all right if you live within walking distance of the church. But if you were far away, you would come over here to the tavern. And that's why we have the ladies' parlor, because a lady from the church wouldn't have come into the tap room. The women in the tap room would have been the wenches, the servers. And so that was another use of the tavern. The other thing that was very helpful is that when they came over here for their break in between the two sections of religion on Sunday, was there was no heat in the churches, so they could get warmed up. So this would give them a chance to get warm and then go back to the cold church for the afternoon. When we operated as a replica tavern in the 1980s and 1990s, the volunteer women would sit in there and they would do needlepoint, they would do other forms of arts and crafts and things like that in there. This room here we call the game room. It was probably just another room where they drank, but we figured they needed something to keep them busy instead of just drinking. So we created the game room, and we used to have a dartboard in there. You can still see it because there's holes in the wall and even in the ceiling where drunken dart people are not good shots. So we had darts in there. We had all sorts of games of the period of the 17 and 1800s. And some of the reenactors would sit in there and play games. They might play chess or checkers. William Blanchard, from what we know, he was originally from East Stoughton. He went and served in the Revolutionary War Army. And he served quite a while. I think from his records, he served 3 or 4 years, which was sort of uncommon. A lot of people in the Revolutionary War, they served 6 months, and then they went back home to their farms. He had served quite a bit, and when he came back, his family decided that You know, they should have a business here, and they opened it as a tavern in 1780. It might have been, you know, because of his travels in the Army, he might have seen taverns and went, hey, that's not a bad idea. And it's a big house. At one time, this building is only a third of what was here. There were two other buildings attached to the back of this building. One was probably where the kitchen was, because they wouldn't have cooked in the house. And the other one was probably the barn, because everybody traveled by horse back then. So you would have needed good stables for the horses. One of the things that we used to have was a lot of people, when they come from Europe to visit America, and they'd come to Boston, and they'd come down here, and they used to tell us because it's the closest thing to a European pub. And so they would like to come here and drink. And sometimes we'd have more people from Europe here on a night than we had people from Massachusetts. Okay, David, that's our spirit, the spirit of the tavern. I don't call him a ghost. He is a spirit who's made himself known over the years. The first time he made himself known to me was in 1980, and the last time was about a month ago. He's not a haunting. He doesn't bother anybody. He doesn't go boo. He doesn't chase people. He doesn't touch people. Mainly it's been noise. Typical of him is that he would walk in and slam doors, walk around. He would stomp up the stairs to the second floor. For some reason, the room that we have is the ladies' room now. Must have been his favorite haunt, because he would stomp up the stairs and then slam the ladies' room door sometimes. We've had incidents where he has moved things. He used to like to move the chairs. When the tavern closed, after a night of being open, people didn't put their chairs back, so one of the last things you'd do is put all the chairs back. And you'd come in here and during the week, and the chairs like this one I'm sitting in would be pulled out like somebody was sitting in it, and nobody else had been in there. We had one incident that, one of many, where we were having the kitchen repainted in the 1990s. And the painter was here working, and at the same time the windows had rotted and we had to replace the windows. So the guys were here putting in new windows. And the manager came up to check on Friday, because they had been here since Monday, both the painter and the window guys. Well, the window guys had finished on Wednesday. You know how it is, window people, they get in and out. So they had left on Wednesday, and when she came up to talk to the painter to see when he was going to finish, he says, I'm almost done. I should be done today. And he says, but I'll still be done ahead of the window guys. And she looked at him and she said, what do you mean the window guys finished on Wednesday? He said, no, they've been upstairs banging everything around all morning. She said, no, you're here alone. There's nobody else here. He didn't believe her, so she gave him a tour of the whole building. And he was visibly shaken. And she said, I'm going to do errands. I'll be back, and I'll give me the invoice and I'll pay you. She came back and the invoice was on the bar, and he's never come back. He set off the alarms, the burglar alarms. We used to have an outdoor alarm bell that would sound like a school bell. And one Sunday morning at 2 a.m., because I only lived down the street and I could hear it, he woke up the whole town. The alarms went off, and the alarm company said it was motion detecting. So the police came, the fire department came, the manager came. They went through the whole building. There was nobody in here. There was no reason for the alarms to go off. They tried to put the alarms off, and the codes didn't work. And then the alarm company got in remotely, and they couldn't shut the alarm down. So now it's 2:30 on a Sunday morning, and this bell is ringing, and half the town is probably woke up by now. All of a sudden, the fire chief says, well, if we can't do anything else, I'm just going to kill the power to the building. That'll shut off the alarm, hopefully. At that point, the alarm went off, stopped ringing. And everybody was like, okay, what'd you do? Nothing. What did you do? Nobody had done anything. The alarm just went off. One of the firefighters said that day, it was a Saturday, the Saturday they had a carnival across the street at the Catholic Church. And it was very noisy, and it was open till 11 o'clock. So the firefighter thought that maybe we had disturbed David with our carnival, so he thought he would disturb us and wake everybody up. Many ghost stories, I could go on forever. Another thing that happened upstairs, we used to have problems with David opening and closing doors, and sometimes not closing them. We would find the door to the attic open a lot, and so we thought maybe it was the latch was loose or something. So I put a hook on the door, you know, a hook and eye, so the door can't open unless you open the hook. We had a video one time where I had just been up in the attic with Tom, our security person, and we had just come down and left. And I had closed the door and put the hook on the door. And when Tom looked at the video camera the next day, there is a cloud, that's the only way I can, like a fog, covers the hook. And then when the fog goes away, the hook is hanging down. It's no longer hooked to the door frame. So those are things that we've actually caught. But other than that, most of what David does is just make a lot of noise to make his presence known. Just this year, we are finishing up a historical survey of the town. We had an architectural historian, she's been in here for 2 years, going through all of the historical properties. Well, not all of them. We could do 90 with the money we had appropriated. And this is one of them. So it's being marked, and she will be recommending certain buildings in town that should go on the National Register. So probably this building will eventually in the next couple of years go on the National Register. It's Blanchard'sTavern.com is the website for both here and the museum down the street. And people can go on the website and can see when we're conducting tours at the museum, and also when we're having events or something here at the tavern. Again, it's Blanchard'sTavern.com. Now, one of the other historical, I don't want to say fact because we don't know that it's fact, but the Baptist Church across the street is on the Underground Railroad, and it was rumored that the tavern was also. And even the paint job on the chimney of the tavern today is supposedly marks it as a safe house for the Underground Railroad. That was one of the things with David, our spirit, in that they have said he is over 300 pounds and not happy, and he was killed right here by the fireplace in the 1860s. I have researched it and not been able to find any information about anybody being killed here in the 1800s at all. But if this was part of the Underground Railroad and they were hiding slaves, runaway slaves here, and one of them happened to die, I don't think anybody was going to call the constable and say, hey, I've got a body here. So that's a possibility of what David is. The reason we think that it's very possible that this was used by the Underground Railroad is upstairs on the second floor, there is a small cabinet inside of one of the fireplaces. And by small, I mean the door is only about 16 inches by 24 inches. And the back of it comes out, and behind it is a room inside the chimney. I call it a room, it's a space. And years ago, when we had thinner people here, we were able to put 3 adult males inside that room at the same time. So that is very possibly a hiding place. And when we talk about orbs and other things that have happened here, we have a security camera upstairs that catches things occasionally. And one of the things that caught years ago was an orb going across. Now, an orb is just a little white light to people. And the orb went across the room and went into the cabinet where the hidden room is. This candle that I'm putting on the mantle is what we call a courting candle. It would have been used back in colonial days. And what it is back then, if you had a daughter and somebody wanted to court her, you might not like them, or you might like them. So what you would do is when the suitor came to the house to visit, and all he could do was visit her in the parlor, and they could sit there and talk at a decent distance, you would put the candle, and you would put this candle, the courting candle, and if you liked the gentleman, you would turn the candle all the way up so we'd have a nice long And when the candle burns down to here, he has to leave. If you do not like the gentleman, you lower the candle as much as you can, and he's out quick. So that's why they call it a courting candle. It would decide that it's like an old-fashioned timer. You know, the boyfriend's got to leave, candle's down.